several years, Madam President, we've seen a growing number of Democrats, agreeing with my position. Today, with the Democrat Congress and the Democrat President, some may be surprised by the number of Democrats who want nothing to do with cap and trade. Politico, we're all familiar with that publication, reported on Monday that, quote, lawmakers from coal and manufacturing states aren't happy that more liberal Democrats are using Copenhagen negotiations to ratchet up pressure to move a bill forward. Quote, I am totally unconcerned about Copenhagen. This is a quote by a Democrat Senator Jay Rockefeller from West Virginia. He said, I'm concerned about West Virginia. Well, I'm glad to hear some of my Democrat colleagues now making these statements. They also reported that, this is still quoting from Politico, Virginia Democrat Senator Jim Webb said on Monday he would not back the cap and trade legislation sponsored by Senators John Kerry and Barbara Boxer, another blow to the troubled Senate climate change bill. He said, quote, it is in its present form. I would not vote for it. I have some real questions about the real complexities on cap and trade. Webb is in the latest of a series of Democrat moderates to raise significant concerns with the climate bill, which has floundered since passing the House in late June. That's quite some time ago. Or consider Democrat Senator Ben Nelson from Nebraska. The Hill recently reported on a CNBC interview with Senator Nelson writing, quote, this was in the Hill, a cap and trade bill to address climate change cannot pass Congress this session, said Senator Ben Nelson, Democrat from Nebraska. Nelson, a centrist Democrat whose vote is key to leaders wielding its 60-vote majority in the Senate, said he and his constituents had not been sold on cap and trade system proposed in the House and the Senate bills to address global warming. No, Nelson simply responded when asked if those cap and trade bills can pass through Congress during an interview with CNBC. And he went on to say, I haven't been able to sell the argument to my farmers, and I don't think they're going to buy it from anybody else. I think at the end of the day, the people who turn the switch on at home will be disadvantaged. The pessimistic assessment makes Nelson a thorn in the side of the party's own leaders who are trying to push this through from the Democratic Party. Now, perhaps the biggest blow to any Senate climate bill came last week from 14 Senate Democrats, primarily from the Midwest, who in a letter challenged the allocation formula of Kerry-Boxer and Waxman-Markey. The letter was signed by Senators Al Franken, Amy Klobuchar, Mark Udall, Michael Bennet, Robert Byrd, Carl Levin, Debbie Stabenow, Sherrod Brown. And what about the prospects for 2010? As Lisa Lair of Politico reported last week, quote, an aggressive White House push on jobs and deficit reduction in 2010 may be yet another sign that climate change legislation will stay on the back burner next year. There's a growing chorus in the party that thinks that we should be doing something more to spur job creation and not necessarily tackle cap and trade right now. That was a moderate Senate Democrat aide. The White House officials told Politico on Friday that President Barack Obama plans to curb new domestic spending beyond jobs programs and focus on cutting the federal deficit next year. In the Senate, Majority Leader Harry Reid has hinted that Democrats plan to take up a job creation bill in the wake of the announcement of the 10.2% unemployment rate. In the House, some lawmakers are beginning to push a major highway bill for next year to focus on job creation. None of this is promising for the major climate change bill. That was a quote, as I said, that came out of Politico. Also, Darren Samuelson with E&E News reported this week that, quote, next November's midterm elections loom large, leaving the climate bill sponsors until about the end of March to notch the 60 votes necessary to pass their bill off the floor and into a conference with the House that would best be finished before the summer. Conventional wisdom is that you have until the spring to get controversial issues moving. That was Senator Ben Cardin, lead co-author of the climate bill that the Environment Public Works Committee passed earlier this month. If not, it's difficult to see getting through closer to the elections. I guess what he's saying there is, you get close to the elections, then you want to be a little more consistent with what Americans believe. In an interesting side note, Mr. Samuelson reported that the Democrats fear a repeat of the disastrous 1992 BTU tax vote. He quotes Al Gore as saying, "Yes, I think the BTU post-traumatic stress disorder is a factor in this debate." To refresh your memory, Madam President, the BTU, I think that was way back in 1994. It was a very similar thing. It was a huge tax increase on energy. And then people realized that they're going to have to pay for it. And that passed the House, ironically, with 219 votes, the same narrow margin that this cap-and-trade bill passed 15 years later. Samuelson also writes that according to Democratic Senator Jay Rockefeller of West Virginia, the talk on the street was that an election year cannot be good for passing the climate bill in the Senate, even though he did not agree with that opinion. There's some possibility of people saying that it's too controversial a bill in an election year, quoting Rockefeller, which is sort of the opposite of how a democracy ought to work. I do agree with him on that. You go ahead and take your chances on that and you get reelected, but people's business should come first. By now, the message should be clear. It's not just Republicans, but Democrats who are blocking passage of cap and trade in the United States Senate. The sooner we are honest with the international community of the impossibility of the Senate moving forward with cap and trade, the sooner we can begin work on an all-of-the-above energy bill to develop domestic energy resources, create jobs, and provide consumers with affordable, reliable energy. I don't